Hello everyone, Jake here at the Watch Preserve, and on the bench today I would like to discuss one of my favorite complications of all time, the Microrotor. It is, in essence, an automatic watch still using the same weighted rotor system that was developed in 1930 fundamentally, just shoved off to the side a bit. The purpose of this is to reduce the overall thickness of this watch. I'm using this Bulova here as an example, and it's not really all that thick, and it's because of that rotor there. You can still have an automatic complication without increasing overall height. And during the mid-century when this was developed, height was a very important consideration. Thin, thin, thin was the number of the day, and so this was the result. At the end of the 1950s, two Swiss brands released their Microrotor innovation around the same time, with Buren presenting the Super Slender featuring a Microrotor caliber and Universal Genève releasing the Polerouter. Apparently unaware of what the other was doing, the companies had worked on this movement simultaneously. Universal Genève coined the name Microrotor and proudly engraved it on one of the bridges. Hans Koscher, who was in charge of developing the Microrotor at Buren, preferred the term planetary rotor instead, which never caught on and is now largely forgotten in the watch world. Today, many attribute the creation of the Microrotor to the cult brand Universal, which is currently enjoying a revival as such, probably due in part to the fact that design legend Gerald Genta was involved in its creation. But who was the actual pioneer? Well, legally speaking, that would be the Buren Watch Company. The patent, filed by engineer Hans Koscher, was filed in Switzerland in 1954. Meanwhile, Universal Genève's patent was filed the following year in 1955. Universal Genève's patent was processed fully in 1958, although it's not really sure how this is legally possible because Buren, again, originally patented this concept. So there was a time when Universal Genève had to engrave patent pending or patent rights pending on every single watch with the Microrotor that they developed. And usually they did that right in the well of the rotor itself. However, all's not hunky-dory with the Microrotor. There are fundamental physical properties that work against it. So, although a Microrotor embedded in the movement itself can be positioned for effective winding performance, it can never deliver the same winding as a centrally positioned larger rotor that is centered and directly over the watch's axis of rotation. And while a Microrotor does allow for a thin watch, it takes up space in the movement itself, which means less room for the gear train and a large mainspring. Average winding performance and reduced power reserve are far from ideal combination and are very noticeable in some Microrotor watches from years past, including this Bulova here. However, more modern movements, such as the Yema CMM20 with its 70-hour power reserve and 4 Hz pulse, shows that this theoretical disadvantage doesn't necessarily have to be the case, thanks to very efficient optimized components. On the other hand, Patek Philippe's time-tested, albeit old-fashioned 240 series of calibers offers a power reserve of 38 hours on some of the watches they power, which is not exactly what we've come to expect from contemporary timepieces. But anyway, this is probably my single most favorite complication ever, just because of how eminently useful it is. Finally, I can have the practical advantage of an automatic rotor without increasing overall bulk. It is horological, having your cake and eating it too, and I'm very glad of that.